Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking absolutely the greatest comeback story in World Cup history. Just picture this for a second. You're 41 years old, you're playing on the single biggest stage in the world, and basically everyone is telling you that you're totally finished. I mean, critics were literally writing the obituary of a legend. But as we all know, you can never, ever write off an icon. Let's get right into how one unforgettable night in Texas completely rewrote the history books.
Okay, let's dive into this. 11. It's a number that had honestly been haunting him for years. We aren't just talking about a minor slump here. This was a staggering 11-match World Cup goal drought. To put that into perspective, you have to go all the way back to the opening match against Ghana in the 2022 tournament to find his last goal on this stage. For a guy who has literally defined his entire life by putting the ball in the back of the net, that number was just this heavy, suffocating weight. The media wasn't just questioning his form anymore. They were asking if he even deserved a spot in the starting 11. The tension in the Portuguese camp was absolutely immense.
And look, this criticism wasn't just coming from random anonymous fans online either. It was coming from fellow legends of the game. Following Portugal's really labored 1-1 draw with DR Congo in their 2026 opener, the knives were officially out. French icon Thierry Henry went on TV and delivered this brutally blunt assessment. He accused Cristiano Ronaldo of prioritizing his own desperate need for a goal over the actual success of the team. Henry even did a full tactical breakdown, showing how the captain's positioning was actively getting in the way of his own teammate, Bruno Fernandes. The narrative was set, right? Ronaldo was the problem. To make matters even worse, we have to look at the broader context here. This pressure cooker environment was being turned all the way up to maximum because of what was happening on other pitches. While Ronaldo was stuck in this 11-match drought, his eternal rival, Lionel Messi, was out there absolutely thriving. Messi had already bagged 5 goals in the tournament, including this stunning hat trick against Algeria. And hey, it wasn't just Messi. The next generation of superstars, guys like Kylian Mbappe, Erling Haaland, Vinicius Jr., they were all making their mark and dominating the headlines. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. It felt like the footballing world was moving on, and Ronaldo was just kind of stuck in the past. So the crucial point here is that the noise wasn't just external anymore. It actually penetrated his bubble. Ronaldo himself later reflected on this exact period, and he gave us this super raw quote, calling it a difficult week, a dark week. You can only imagine the psychological toll that takes. The sheer weight of the constant chatter, what he called the unfair criticism, it was pushing him to a breaking point. For a player who spent his whole life thriving on proving people wrong, he was backed into a corner unlike any other time in his career. The stage was perfectly set. It was either time to quietly fade away or time to author the ultimate redemption arc. Well, that brings us right to this specific time and place, June 23rd, 2026, under the bright lights of Energy Stadium in Houston, Texas, match day for Portugal against Uzbekistan. When the teams walked out of that tunnel, the atmosphere was incredibly thick with anticipation, and honestly, skepticism. Every single camera lens was locked onto the Portuguese captain. Every pundit was ready to overanalyze his every touch. The referee blew the whistle, and everything we thought we knew about aging in professional sports was about to be turned completely upside down. Let's move to and see how this builds, because the sequence of events here is just breathless. We start right at kickoff. It took him exactly 6 minutes. 6 minutes to silence the critics and that massive crowd inside NRG Stadium. João Cancelo delivers this precise cross, and Ronaldo meets it with a superb, explosive half volley to open the scoring. Boom. But he wasn't done. Fast forward to the stroke of halftime, the 45-minute mark. After taking all that heat from Thierry Henry about getting in Bruno Fernandes' way, what happens? Fernandes delivers a perfectly weighted through ball. Ronaldo latches onto it and slots home a cool, clinical finish. In just one half of football, the drought was over and the entire narrative was rewritten. By the time the ref blew the whistle for halftime, he hadn't just broken a drought, he had completely shredded the history books. With that very first goal, he became the first player in the history of football to score in 6 consecutive World Cup tournaments. Read that again, 6. And by adding that second goal before the break, he became the oldest player in FIFA World Cup history to score multiple goals in a single match. And whose record did he break to get that one? None other than Lionel Messi's. In just 45 minutes of breathless action, he pulled off what most players couldn't even dream of doing in 3 lifetimes. We really need to pause for a second and emphasize this number. 41 years and 138 days old. Seriously, in a sport absolutely dominated by 20-something athletes at their peak physical condition, where your pace and recovery time mean everything, performing at this level at 41 is a mind-boggling athletic marvel.
To have the explosive power to hit that half volley, the stamina to keep making runs behind the defensive line, and the mental fortitude to execute flawlessly under all that pressure at the twilight of his career, it's just a crazy testament to an unprecedented level of discipline.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it places this performance into the broader historical context. Because that second goal wasn't just a regular brace, it was his 10th career World Cup goal. That officially pushed him past the legendary Eusébio, making Ronaldo Portugal's outright all-time leading scorer in World Cup finals. He literally conquered his nation's history. But if you look closely at the other names in that category, even at 41 years old and 138 days old, he is now the second oldest goal scorer in the history of the entire tournament. He's trailing only Cameroon's iconic Roger Milla. He's breathing some incredibly rarefied air here. As Portugal marched to a totally dominant 5-0 victory, the vindication just started pouring in from the people who actually stood by him. Through all the emotional turmoil of that dark week, manager Roberto Martinez defended him and after the match, proudly hailed him as the perfect captain and the icon who kept their dressing room together. Even his former Manchester United teammate Wayne Rooney, who, let's be honest, hasn't always shied away from criticizing him, had to take a step back in awe. Rooney called the feat of scoring twice at a World Cup at age 41 simply incredible. It was the ultimate mic drop from a man who has spent his entire career chasing the top of every single list. But perhaps the absolute most enduring image of this comeback comes from the moments right after the final whistle. The emotion just totally boiled over. He finds this television camera lens, stares directly into the living rooms of millions of people around the globe, and just screams, "I'm back, I'm back." He later told the press that this raw, visceral outburst was a direct message to his detractors. It was a reminder, in his own words, so they don't forget, 23 years like this. 23 years of dominating the sport, and they actually dared to write him off after one bad week? And this brilliantly illustrates the kind of aura that surrounds him among his peers. Because despite the unbelievable heroics and that super passionate celebration, the footballing world always has a little room for some cheeky banter. The legendary Zlatan Ibrahimovic, when asked about Ronaldo's intense celebration, mocked the "I'm back" message with his classic trademark wit. He told reporters he didn't understand why Ronaldo felt the need to shout it, remarking simply, "I thought he never left." It's a hilarious quote for sure, but it perfectly cements exactly what Ronaldo represents. An enduring, permanent fixture of footballing excellence who has literally been a constant for over 2 decades. A legend was written off. The critics loudly declared that he was finished. And he responded by producing a night of pure history, breaking records in Texas that may quite literally never be touched again. He looked right into that camera and declared to the world that he was back. But looking at the entirety of his career and looking at the sheer impossibility of what he achieved at 41 years old, we have to end on a thought that challenges the very premise of his big return. Did he ever really leave? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gave you a really clear picture of this incredible, historic moment.